Toronto Sun reporter Ian Robertson, a gregarious and well-liked member of the Sun family, known as much for his ever-present willingness to chat as he is for his work ethic, retired from the paper on Thursday after 25 years of service. Robertson came to Toronto Police Headquarters today to say farewell to Chief Bill Blair, who's known Robertson since the latter began working at the Toronto Sun in 1987.
There we go.
Now you're not going to get in trouble with your colleagues for that, are you?
You know what? To heck with me.
What's it? I've been a police officer now 36 years in Toronto. And over the course of that, you know, when you work in investigative areas or if you work in a particular part of the city, you would develop a relationship with certain journalists. Journalists who were specialists in policing stories, not just in, reporting the flash in the morning, this has happened, but getting into some in-depth. And there seems to be very little time for much of that type of reporting today, but there are still some old school guys around, now a few fewer of them than was the case, and as of January 31st, one fewer.
I think one of the greatest pleasures I've had over more than 40 years of reporting, starting off in Belleville, Ontario, getting to know police officers there, getting to know them, whether it was simply observing from a sidewalk, talking to them for an interview, getting to know and being trusted by officers, detectives, to talk a little bit more strongly about, well, what is happening? Well, sir, can you tell me about the possible at such and such? The trust level that was there. It would also help me understand a little bit about what was happening on the street, because the backgrounding was incredibly important.
Where I think the public has been well served by reporters who knew how to get the facts and presented them in a way that would help people understand what was truly going on. A newspaper report can tell the people of Toronto not just about the crime that's been committed, but a little bit about the people that are investigating that crime, a little bit about the people who work for them. Because I know from a police officer's perspective, sometimes when your story is told well, when something that you're working on, something that you've done, something that you believe is really important, you put a huge amount of effort into it, its importance, and when that story is told well, the people of Toronto know how important it was as well. Mm-hmm. By the way, that the police should never be above criticism, and part of that respectful relationship is that, if you'd done something wrong, you knew that was going to get reported to. If you made a mistake, or if, we had not succeeded in something. That part of the story also is going to be told, and I think there's value in that.
The experience of an officer who gains time on the street and is able to respond to that and learn from sometimes mistakes and sometimes positive things shows in the benefit of the community. Understanding mistakes that happen is also part of forgiveness of people. That includes journalists too. We make mistakes, I think, on a few occasions, and that's something we learn from as well.
The traditional relationship between crime journalists in the city of Toronto. The successful journalists, and I've known many of them, I've known many people in the reporting profession, in print media, but also on television and radio, that I have had profound respect for. And it was because they were thorough and they were fair. And I guess as human beings we'd all like cheerleaders, but nobody expects that. We're not seeking cheerleaders, we're just seeking fairness. And you get to know who's fair. You get to know who gets the facts right and who reports them fairly. And those are people you don't mind talking to. And sometimes sharing a little bit more of yourself. Not just the details of an investigation, but a little bit more of yourself. And that comes over time, and it comes as a result of trusting relationships. For a long time, newspapers invested in those relationships because they invested in reporters who would be crime reporters for maybe their entire career. And you and I have both known them, and we can name them. It happens less now. People are assigned to it for a brief period of time. Frankly, quite often they'll burn the bridge and move on. I have to tell you, one of the things I remember best about Ian is Ian would come to me, and Ian would invest a fair bit of time into his stories. You and I've had reporters come in and talk to me for 5 minutes. I think some of my longest conversations with anybody in the media were with Ian. Because Ian would come in and we would talk about a lot of different things. We would talk about the story he was writing, but we would have long conversations about a lot of things. And you would take the time and we would give you the time, part of the relationship,
You always do.
to dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
And young people now I see in media, they arrive at a crime scene, usually with their microphone.
64-year-old
They can
Robertson,
get
who grew up in
somebody to say,
Ontario's Ottawa Valley, wrote for the Belleville Intelligencer and the Kingston Whig Standard before joining the Sun in 1987. Throughout his career at the Toronto Sun,
That's
Robertson
pretty
was a
standard
regular
stuff.
face on the paper's
doesn't
crime
take a
beat.
great deal of skill. The better reporter is the one that gets into this neighborhood, gets into the story, gets into people's lives, and can give the rest of the city the texture of that story, and not just the 15-second clip, which everybody seems to pursue, or the one line in a story, but some depth to it. And I think that's something we value, and something that I think, when people retire, you hope that there's another thoughtful journalist coming up who wants to tell the story, the whole story.
Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair called Robertson a dying breed of reporter in today's understaffed newspapers. Robertson may have retired, but he won't be disappearing. He'll dabble in freelance writing and is planning a book on military history.
Ian?
Retirement will also mean time to enlarge his stamp collection and to even further pursue a lifelong interest in photography.
Thank you for everything that you've done and the friendship that we've enjoyed.
And I've treasured that too, sir.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
I'll throw you into my office. One last time.
One last time. Oh, lovely.
Hey, how you doing?
Blair called Robertson an old-school reporter, the kind of journalist now rarely found in today's cash-strapped and understaffed newsrooms, the kind of writer who would really get to know the police, people, and neighborhoods he was reporting on. For the Toronto Sun, I'm Terry Davidson.